When she used to see the news of terrorist attacks where children and innocent people died, when there were so many wars, she used to cry. She would say to me, "Mommy, why does there have to be so much evil? Why can't there be more love?"
She irradiated so much goodness, everyone wanted to be with her.
In all circumstances, at school, while studying, in class with her friends, she always wanted to give more. She always wanted to give everything, everything.
And I saw her with that vocation to be a religious, not to be in this world without doing anything, but rather to help others so that this world can be different.
She knew in her heart that she wouldn't live long. That's why she was in a hurry to be a saint. She didn't know if she'd have time to be one.
She always had one question constantly in her heart, and that question was, what more can I do for God?
Valeria was born into a very poor family in Puerto Viejo, Ecuador. Her parents were very young when she was born, and unfortunately her father had a drug addiction problem, which did not make the situation at home very easy. Her mother could no longer resist this situation of stress and suffering, and had agreed to sign him into a rehabilitation clinic where they could help him overcome his problem. During his time in the clinic, her father nurtured a desire for revenge that led him to end up killing his wife. When she was just over a year and a half old, Valeria witnessed her mother's murder. Her father shot her before her eyes. Valeria was found crying, hugging her mother's body.
We arrived at the hospital and they told us that she had already passed away.
They brought her here to the house, and they also brought the girls.
And in the same car that brought my daughter's body, they brought the girls. I said, "My God, why is this happening to me?"
She couldn't sleep at night. She would wake up and start to cry. When she saw blood, she would scream because she had seen when her father killed her mother. But as the months went by, little by little, she changed.
Thanks be to God, we had the possibility to give them everything they needed. My parents, my siblings, and I got together and always pulled them through.
When she was 6 years old, a student much older than her told her that her father had killed her mother. No one knows why she never expressed how much learning that secret made her suffer, told in this way so straightforward.
I wasn't prepared to tell her what had happened.
She arrived home and we saw her different, as if she was sad, as if she was withdrawn. With my father, with whom she was always so affectionate, she didn't want to go near him.
About 12 days later, I was sweeping when she told me, "Mama, I'm going to tell you something." I said, "What do you want to tell me?" She said, "Why did my daddy kill my mommy?" I held her And I embraced her, and she said, "Don't cry." Then I told her, "No, my daughter, he didn't do it."
I came home and found my mother crying. I said to her, "Mommy, what's wrong?" And she told me.
She took the girls to their room.
And she said to me, "Why did my daddy kill my mommy? Your daddy, as you call him, is not your father, he's your grandfather. Your real father is the one who killed your mom."
My mom lived in Pueblo Nuevo with the girls. So, since I lived here in Playa Prieta and my children studied at the sister school, the Holy Family, I told her, "Mommy, why don't you come live in Playa Prieta so you can put the girls in school?"
The school year had already begun, and the spots were already full. But they told us the story of why they were asking us for this favor. So we admitted them to the school, and thanks to the missionary groups of the Home of the Mother, they made it possible for Valeria to receive a scholarship. She could pay the tuition, which wasn't very much, but it's the tuition that the students have to pay to attend our school. And so we sponsored them.
So, we enrolled them in the school, and Valeria was always so excited.
Valeria had a really hard time with her studies. It was hard for her to memorize, to retain the concepts, and then write them down. She came with a low academic level. She wasn't very bright. She wasn't talented, intellectually speaking. However, what she did have was a great capacity of making an effort.
One day she had a makeup exam. I think it was either history or philosophy, one of the two. But it was a difficult subject. So she was saying, "I'm not going to pass, I don't know, can you help me study?" I said, "Yes, of course." And we went to my room to study. And she was very dedicated. And she said to me, "Please, Erica, teach me, teach me. I want to learn because I want to be a servant sister. And the servant sisters know a lot. So I also want to know a lot." And I remember that night very clearly. I fell asleep around about 1:30 in the morning, and she was still studying and studying. Then the next day at 4 a.m., I also heard that she got up to continue studying.
And I remember on one occasion she was in an exam, and as always, she was the last to finish. She was always the last to finish in all the exams. On this occasion, I stayed to the end with her to receive her exam. And she was answering the last question, and she looked at me, and she said, "Sister, I think you sisters are very intelligent, because you've studied a lot." And she said, "And I'm not smart, and studying is very difficult for me. But it doesn't matter, because the Lord has called me to be a sister, so I'm going to make every effort to study more and to be as intelligent as I can."
And in spite of her effort, it was as if the Lord wanted to purify her in this, because even though she studied and sometimes stayed up all night without sleeping, she didn't get good grades. And so it was as if the Lord was really purifying her in this.
And of course, always with her rosary in her hand praying, because of course, there were things that were really hard for her. And all those things, I noticed that she offered them to the Lord, and always with a smile, without complaining.
The teachers saw her great effort, and for all the teachers, Valeria was a real joy. We were so proud of her perseverance, of her persistence.
So she went grade to grade, never having to repeat a year. She went to her first get-together with the home in July and had a great time. And in this event, she took part in a conversation at dinner. They were all talking, and the sister asked them, "Do you guys know? Have you asked Jesus what he wants from you?"
And some of the girls said, "No, sister, I haven't." And some others said, "Well, I have, but sometimes I'm afraid."
Then she turned directly to Valeria and said, "Valeria, have you already asked Jesus what he wants from you?" And then Valeria began to ask, "And how do I ask him? How do you do that? How do you know what God wants from you?"
She started to ask a ton of questions. It was an explosion of questions all of a sudden. So then I said to her, "Well, you have homework after this get-together. You know that you have to keep asking the Lord."
So as a result of this activity, she began to go every day during recess to have her time of intimacy with Jesus.
Sister, I just came out of the chapel. Jesus still doesn't speak to me. Jesus hasn't told me anything yet.
Why? Well, because Valeria thought that God spoke as any person speaks, and that she had to listen to him with her ears, until a sister explained to her that no, that the Lord is heard in the heart. And then, of course, Valeria understood that God spoke to her a lot, and that if that was God's way of speaking, then yes, the Lord spoke to her a lot.
And she came running one day and said to me, Sister, now I know. Today Jesus spoke to me. Yes, Jesus has spoken to me. And what did Jesus say to you? And she said, Look, sister, he told me that I have to be a saint. And I said, wow, great. Yeah, and she said, yes, sister, but it's not only that. I have to be a saint, and I have to hurry to be a saint. Sister, I have to hurry. I have to run. In August of 2013, she saw that Our Lady was asking her to enter the home of the mother.
At the beginning, she was like a sponge. Everything the sisters told us, she would take it in super fast.
She was always one step ahead. If prayer was 5 minutes, she would do 15. And when she had to do 15, she would do 30 minutes or an hour, and so on. She was always one step ahead.
It was like a process of falling in love with the Lord more and more each day, and also to enter with both feet. Once she entered into the home, she went, we could say, from good to better in her growth. She always went upwards. She never went backwards, always forward.
She had a very beautiful relationship with the Eucharist, with Jesus in the Eucharist. Very profound, like a person in love, very much in love.
She constantly nourished her relationship with the Lord. When she had free time, instead of just hanging out wherever, she would visit the Lord and say, I just want him to see me. She used to arrive at the chapel and just sit there and say, I just want you to see me. And then she would leave again.
For her, the Mass was the treasure of her life.
Her grandmother or her grandfather, I don't remember who it was, told her, Look, it can be very dangerous, so I don't want you to go to Mass anymore. You're not going to go out in the evenings. And she said, all I felt was the Lord telling me, you have to say this. Take everything away from me, everything, everything, Grandma. But do not take one thing away from me, going to Mass. Don't take going to Mass away from me, because if you take it away, I'm going to die. So her grandmother thought, how am I going to tell her that she can't go to Mass? She would say, take care of her, take care of her. Teresita always said that. She once told me that when she received Jesus in the Eucharist, she felt a great longing to go to heaven to be with him. Valeria's relationship with Our Lady changed a lot after 2014. When she experienced that Our Lady received her as a daughter, and she experienced her as a mother. She wanted all young people to get to know God. That was her greatest desire.
I know that our third mission is to conquer young people for Jesus Christ, but one of the things that is always difficult for us is to open up to others and to welcome them. But one of the things that also stood out in Valeria was this. When a new girl arrived, she was always attentive to her.
The things that stood out to her classmates and the people who went to the group are that they say that the person who welcomed me the most was Valeria. And she was the one who would ask me, and who are you? Or how are you? And the one who was always concerned about me was Valeria. And this is very curious because Valeria was tremendously shy. She was very, very shy. And yet she was continually coming out of herself to communicate with others and to integrate them. She was always concerned about their spiritual life.
She had a hard time relating herself to other people, like to make conversation. But in spite of all that, she talked a lot.
Her mission was always to help her classmates.
Above all, she taught them with her life. Valeria was a very coherent person. What she said she could say because she lived it herself first, and in a much more demanding way. And that was something that her classmates noticed.
She was very cheerful, and everyone in the class loved her. She could have been a popular girl, but no. She always tried to be humble. Some people have a hard time recognizing when they've made a mistake, but she didn't. She humbly recognized it and always tried to make it better. Always.
We were always playing jokes on each other. We would make jokes, she'd laugh together. She would ask me, tell me, go to confession, go to Mass.
She always told me that one has to listen to God, even if we don't like what He's saying to us.
My seat was pretty far away from her in class, but when I would go up behind her to ask her something or just to bother her, because we always bothered each other in class, I always liked to make her laugh because she laughed so much that she cried. She would always tell me to change. Washington, you need to convert.
Valeria was a very special girl. She was always very kind, but when she had to correct, she did it with firmness and with gentleness at the same time.
Valeria was very joyful, and she was very courageous too. When someone did something wrong, she would always say, "No, this is wrong." And she would get mad at us when we did something wrong, because she didn't take certain things as a joke. She would say those things seriously. And I always had a certain respect for her because, well, it was like she was challenging me. And I had to lower my head because she was someone who was closer than I was to where I wanted to be.
There's always like that type of rejection towards a person that stirs up your conscience in some way.
Obviously, there was also some resentment towards her from some of the classmates. I think that was kind of normal. In spite of that, she always wanted the good of her classmates.
I felt that what she told me was the truth. She never bothered me. For me, she was a great friend.
She was very cheerful. She had a beautiful smile, but she didn't have like a bright character that stood out or called attention to itself. No, quite the contrary. However, her classmates and other people tended to like to get close to her because of this natural goodness that she had. Later on, we made a pilgrimage to Cajas. And Cajas is a national park where there is a shrine dedicated to Mary, the guardian of the faith.
It was the first time we went for all of us, even for Valeria, who had only been in the home for a short time.
And on that pilgrimage to that shrine, she experienced very strongly that Our Lady told her that her vocation was with the servant sisters. And Our Lady asked her for more things. Among them, to go to Mass every day, to pray the whole rosary every day, to do prayer, but to pray more vibrantly, she used to say.
To dress more modestly, although she always dressed quite decently, but with even more modesty, that she could grow in certain virtues. She began to understand that Our Lady was asking her to change a series of things in her behavior, in such a way that, as a result of this pilgrimage, Valeria made a change that we could say was radical.
And from then on, she was like a rocket.
After Cajas, they had spiritual exercises at school. But we decided that she shouldn't participate in those exercises because she was 13 years old and we considered her to be too young. I think we were wrong because she was spiritually mature enough to have done the exercises very well. But at that time we didn't see it. And in those exercises, a group of young people experienced that God was asking them to lead a much deeper and much more serious spiritual life. And so they formed a group within the home that they later called the HMYPEP, pronounced JPEP. J is Y, but in Ecuador they say J. And what does YPEP mean? It meant Yo prefiero el paraíso. I prefer paradise.
Almost all of us were 16 years old, but Valeria was younger. She was 13. So when she saw that we weren't doing well, or she saw us with little generosity, she was always there to push us forward. In reality, she was the youngest, but she was the most committed.
She sustained us. She would say, "It doesn't matter, we can keep on trying. You guys don't know just how much I love you. You think I don't have faults, but I do have them too. But that's okay, we have to get up and continue on, just as we have done so far, and always preferring paradise."
Before the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus came Corpus Christi. They were going to have time for adoration. And for Valeria, it was very important because she said that night, that she saw how much Jesus had suffered for her. That he had loved her so much that he had not let her go astray, and that he had arranged all the circumstances so that she could get to meet us, could come to the school, could get to know the faith better. And she said, everything the Lord has done for me is because he loved me so much, and she thanked God for that.
Es porque me ha amado tanto. Entonces ella daba gracias a Dios por eso.
I want the best years of my life to be for you. Why keep waiting such a good God who loves me so much?
We were on a pilgrimage to Quito, and one of those days we went, again, to the Basilica of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. We were praying there, and at one point, a sister said, well, now you have to write a letter to Jesus. It was something very intimate between you and the Lord, as if there was nobody else. Everything you wanted to say to the Lord, you had to write it in that letter.
Now we're going to write a letter as if you're not going to go back home, and then we are going to offer it to the Lord. Valeria said that this letter was very difficult for her. She said, I just can't. And then she remembered what she always said to the Lord. I know I can't, but you help me. Help me because I can't do it. So at that moment, when she was saying that, she began to write the letter, as if she was writing to her grandparents. Look, Grandma and Grandpa, I have a vocation and it is with the sisters, and maybe I have to go to Spain. But at the end of the letter, she said, but I am sure we will see each other in heaven. She said, I finished the letter like that because I know that they will be with me in heaven.
What stood out most about her was her simplicity. She was happy with whatever she had.
She wanted her room to be humble and simple, a room just made of bamboo. We made her a closet out of pieces of wood, and she was happy in her room. She said that nobody had a closet like hers, that it was very beautiful.
One year, they donated to us backpacks, and they were really nice. So we started to give them out, and I handed one to Valeria. And her immediate reaction was a look of surprise, and she told me she didn't want the backpack. And I was like, Valeria, why don't you want the backpack? And so there was a struggle between the two of us. I was trying to convince her because she said, no, sister, if the one I have is fine and it works for me, why would I want a new one? Give it to the other kids who need it more than me. I said, Valeria, there's enough for everyone. They gave us so many backpacks that everyone gets one. And only when she understood that no one would be missing out, she accepted the backpack we gave her.
If a child at school didn't have a pencil, her pencils were tiny because she would always save them. She would give them the big pencil and keep the smaller one for herself so that the other children could do their homework.
One day, Valeria came up to me because at that time we were offering members of the home t-shirts with the Home of the Mother logo. Then she came to me and said, Erica, I have a question. I want one t-shirt, but, well, maybe two. But I don't know if two is like greed and if it's not right. So I encouraged her and told her, but look, they're good t-shirts. They're the Home of the Mother t-shirts.
If she needed a pair of sneakers, she would look for the cheapest ones because she said, Mommy, I know that my grandpa doesn't have a job, and then later we won't have enough to buy food. She was always like that.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I have a hard time smiling. I have to make a very, very big effort. This feeling is horrible.
One of her greatest temptations was sadness. She always told me, "Sister, my greatest temptation is sadness. To be downcast, sad."
She felt sadness in the sense that something would happen to her. It would make her have a come down. She would have a small drop. It was as if the devil was always tempting her to sadness.
But you could see that she was always making a special effort to maintain herself joyful in everything, in all circumstances, with her classmates, with other girls.
One of the things she said was, "Sister, let's make a deal. When you see that I'm like this, just look at me. And that way, I know that Our Lady is looking at me and tells me, 'Come on, Valeria, smile again.' Then I'll have to smile." We never saw her sad.
If someone told a joke in class, no matter how bad the joke was, she would laugh harder than anyone. You could hear her laughter 2 or 3 classrooms over.
The figure of Chiara Luce, for example, helped her a lot in this. She said that she had understood that the Lord was asking her to suffer like her, like Chiara, with a smile. And she succeeded in conquering that joy, but for love of Jesus. So sadness, it was like her battlefield.
She had to go get her ID card, and when she saw her father's name, the first thing she said to me was, "I don't want to have my father's name or his last name."
She tried hard not to remember. It's true that she didn't really have any memories because it happened when she was very little, but her grandparents and her uncles and aunts constantly talked about it. So because of that, she could bring up an image and frequently bring it back to her memory. However, she said she made an effort not to remember anything and to not bring any scenes to mind, and I think that gave her a lot of stability. She was a perfectly normal girl.
One day, after receiving the Eucharist, she felt that the Lord was asking her to love as He loved. And she said, "Well, how can I love like Him?" And while receiving the Lord, she clearly felt that she was lacking one thing: forgiving her father. She said, "I didn't hold a grudge against him, but I felt like there was something that I still hadn't forgiven."
But from then on, she began to see the reality of what had happened. And later, she told me that we should forgive her father, that she had already forgiven him. "God forgives us, Mamita," she said to me.
She forgave him.
Yes, I have forgiven the person who has hurt me the most. My father, who did something terrible to me that should not be done to any child, leaving me without a mother and running away. I see that what he did was because of his human weakness. Yes, with sincerity and from the deepest part of my being, I forgive him, because I love him and I want him to be saved. Who am I not to forgive those who hurt me, if Jesus, who is God, forgave those who hurt him and caused his death?
And she told me, "Mamita, I want to meet my father. And I want to talk to him about so many things. I'm sure that the moment my dad did that to my mom, that he regretted it."
She desired to hug her father and tell him, "Dad, don't worry, because through what you did, God has allowed me to encounter what is greatest in my life, which has been to find God."
And no, she never met her father. She never got to have a relationship with him. No, she never did. The Lord just wanted her to forgive him in her heart, and that's it.
She said that in her heart, she had no hatred or any revenge, that she could not feel those things in her heart.
It's a heroic attitude of love and charity. This type of forgiveness is not a forgiveness like, yeah, I'll forgive you. No. It's a complete and radical healing of the soul, and a step up to a higher level of love and charity.
Are you willing to offer yourselves to God and bear all the sufferings He wills to send you, as an act of reparation for the sins by which He is offended, and of supplication for the conversion of sinners?
She read the life of the shepherd children of Fatima and was very impressed by the value of sacrifice. So she began to look for simple ways to make sacrifices, so that she could offer them up to Jesus for love and for the conversion of sinners and in reparation for her sins.
To go to Mass, we had to go in the truck with the sisters. And I remember that, well, here in wintertime, it is very, very hot. And of course, like 12 of us would go in the sisters' truck in the cargo bed. But I remember that Valeria would let everyone else sit down, and she didn't care if she had to sit in a corner.
I'm going to make a sacrifice to convert my family. And I said, well, what are you going to do? And she said, sister, I'm going to wear a jacket all the time, even if it's hot out. And I'm going to always wear it.
I saw her many times here at school, at recess, or when she went home, at midday with the terrible sun and with her jacket on.
Just looking at her made me feel hot. I would say, Valeria, when we would be going to Mass, Valeria, what are you doing with that on? Valeria, I'm dying of heat just looking at you. She would say, I'm fine, don't worry, I'm fine.
And her classmates would tell her, come on, Valeria, take that off, it's hot in here. And Valeria didn't pay any attention to them.
And I remember on one occasion, her eyes were red, and we thought, what's wrong with her? And I remember a sister put her hand on her forehead and said, she has a fever. We gave her a thermometer, and she had a 103-degree fever, but she still had the same smile and was giving totally of herself. We said, but Valeria, you're sick? And she said, no, I'm fine. And every time I saw her at recess or in class, when I went up to her to say, how are you doing? She would say, good, sister. Am I smiling? Am I giving it my all?
She always said, sister, this classmate is suffering a lot. I'm going to offer this up for him. She was very self-sacrificing for others. She always did it in a hidden way.
And it was to offer Jesus these small sacrifices, but they were really very big. When it was one day after another, and you have to persevere in that effort, one begins to understand how hard it is, you know?
Valeria frequently wrote to my email address, but I didn't answer because I had forgotten my password. Then one day, she called me on my cell phone and said, why don't you answer my emails? And I told her, oh Valeria, I forgot my password. And she told me, I used to forget my password too, but to never forget it again, I put, Servant Sisters Forever, and in all caps, and that way I never forget it. And I said to her, oh Valeria, I can tell that you are really in love with the Lord and with your vocation. And she told me, yes, I am very much in love with the Lord.
Mommy, she said to me as she entered through the door. Mamita, I have a boyfriend. I'm going to get married. And I was very surprised, and I said, what is going on? Mamita, my boyfriend is God. I'm going to marry him.
She had a picture of Jesus, and she showed it to my father and said, look, Papi, let me introduce you to my boyfriend.
I'm going to introduce you to my boyfriend. Okay, I told her, I want to meet him. As she showed me the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Papito, this is my boyfriend. And I like to be funny, so I looked at it and said, take care of my little girl, because she is very pretty, and you are going to have problems with me if you don't take care of her.
And my dad was happy because he knew that she had chosen the path of goodness.
In a conversation once, she said, sister, for me, the religious vocation is not a burden. For me, it is the most beautiful gift that the Lord has given me. He has called me to religious life, to be all His, to be with Him alone. Sister, I am so happy.
She was always watching the sisters. She was always watching us at all times. because she wanted to imitate us in everything. And I remember when I was teaching class, she would be there with her eyes wide open, and she didn't even blink while she was looking at me. And sometimes I would say to her, "Valeria, how many eyelashes do I have?" Then she would look away and burst out laughing, and she would realize that she had just been staring at the sisters to see what they were doing so she could do it too. Valeria was very pretty and very good, so of course she had many boys after her.
She always tried to go unnoticed by everyone to not attract attention, although in reality she stood out for her way of being, for her beauty, for, I don't know, for the purity of her eyes.
Which actually made her beauty even more luminous.
But she always knew how to put up a wall against all of this.
That is what I have to do, have the heart of a servant sister, only for the Lord, and I have to make a vow of chastity. So she made her first vow of chastity on a first Saturday, because she said that Our Lady was going to help her to live it out. So then the devil became very angry and many temptations came. Valeria was very beautiful, and many boys showed up. And she said, "Before, I had never noticed them. Now they're everywhere."
She told me that all the boys were asking for her phone number to be in contact with her.
So she had that struggle, but she said, "Now I understand why I had to make that vow."
And she said, "Sister, I can't do it. I can't give them my number because my heart has to be totally God's, only God's."
She knew that with that vow, she could no longer say no to the Lord, and she couldn't look at anyone else. There was a stand in the area that sold food at night with sodas and different things. But it was the only place where there were a lot of kids from the area. People from other places would come, they would meet up there. And she said, "Sister, there are guys who look at me, and I see that they look at me not in a good way, but in a bad way. So I don't think I should go there with my sister anymore." She said, "Not because I think I'm going to fall, but because they are sinning, and I don't want them to sin."
And also, for example, in her relationship with the boys in her class, she was always very austere. She maintained her distance very well. She wouldn't fool around.
She used to tell the girls not to dress badly because it provokes the guys a lot and it's wrong. And she always was well dressed, and you could also tell in her gaze that she was pure.
She never dressed indecently. She was always dressed very purely, very decent, with loose clothes, not too tight.
That's why her classmates would often say, "Don't look at me, Valeria, don't look at me. I don't want you to look at me." And she would say, "But why don't you want me to look at you?" They couldn't bear her gaze because she transmitted purity.
In Ecuador, turning 15 is like a dream. They throw you a huge party.
I told her we're going to have a mass. And since my son is a year older than her, I told her that he could be her escort.
Then one day she said, "Look, sister, I'm going to tell my grandparents that I don't want to do this."
When the days approaching her 15th birthday came closer, she told me no, she didn't want to do it anymore. She wanted a mass, and what she said to my mother was, "Mommy, I want to have lunch with my friends." So the girls came here, and they had lunch after mass, and they took her to the assembly hall, where they had a surprise for her.
The surprise party consisted of a dinner party in the school auditorium. We had decorated everything beautifully.
And why not give her a pink habit instead of a pink dress? And the sister said yes.
Curiously, at that time we also had a new belt, and we had some new sandals. I don't even know where they had come from.
We spoke with one of the ladies of the home who was a seamstress.
After the mass, we were waiting for Valeria to arrive to the school.
We gave her the habit.
And when she saw it, she started crying and said, "But what is this?"
She was very, very happy, for real.
And between all of us, we put it on her.
And we also put a cross of perpetual vows on her.
We brought her in blindfolded.
She appeared in the assembly hall dressed in her pink habit. She was the most beautiful quinceañera we had ever seen in our lives. Everyone was in awe.
And so I got inside that box that was already decorated.
And her escort was the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
And she was crying from the joy she had.
Her face radiated light.
And I came out, and we both got a little emotional and started crying.
We did the changing of the shoes, which obviously wasn't to a high heel or anything, but to a servant sister's shoe.
And then when she had to take off the habit, she didn't want to.
She was so happy for the party that the sisters and her friends had thrown for her.
She asked me to enter as a servant sister, and I explained to her that she couldn't be one yet. But I told her that there is another commitment. While you are preparing to become a sister, you can already make a commitment as aspirant.
And I saw her come out of where she was talking to Father. And she was very, very happy. And she came running to where I was and she said, "Sister, now I can be an aspirant. Now I can.
I saw that she had a great spiritual maturity, and at the same time I saw that she was a gift from God for the institution. So the truth is that I could not say no to her being able to enter the Servant Sisters, because I saw that it could really be God's plan for her.
So I said, "But Valeria, now you have to tell your grandparents." "Oh, sister, I hadn't thought about that, but I'm sure they'll let me."
She was in a big hurry, wanting to be a sister, to be like a sister. When she told us to sign for her a paper because she was a minor, she said, "Mama, this is still a long way off, but I already want to, Mamita. I already want to."
And she came very excited with the papers signed by her grandparents, that they had given her permission, and that she could enter as an aspirant. And so that is how her short adventure began as a servant sister of the Home of the Mother. Because, of course, none of us thought that her journey would be so short.
How can I not be happy if my heart is already where it has always wanted to be?
In April of 2016, the area of Playa Prieta suffered heavy flooding. The excess of water caused by torrential rains led to the decision to open the dam, causing the river to overflow. A great flood reached the school.
The water reached above the waist. The school was totally flooded. The town as well. In May, classes were going to begin and the school was left a disaster. So all the candidates, Valeria, who was an aspirant, and some of the girls closest to the sisters went to live during those days in the school, in the upper part, to help the sisters to remove the water and to remove the mud. It was something incredible.
Shortly after the flood began, the area lost electricity. Praying the rosary was the consolation of the sisters and the girls during the days of the flood. And it was Our Lady who was their great light in the midst of the darkness.
Those days of the flood, there was very intense work. They ended up exhausted.
During that week, the week of the flood, we called it the gift week because it really was a gift for all of us. We worked a ton, cleaning the whole school, trying to get out all the water that we could.
And we offered everything for the persecuted Christians and for the souls in purgatory. So there was a beautiful environment of joy the whole time in that situation.
And an environment, I don't know, in which one could breathe holiness. Everybody was giving 100 or 1,000%.
The whole sector needed help, and the sisters would help as much as they could. They would never have imagined what the Lord was preparing them for during those long days.
In the morning, we were working, just like during the whole week. Very, very hard. No, but really, like very hard. So the sisters invited me to stay for lunch, and I was very happy, to be honest. And there was an environment like in a family, a beautiful environment. First we were playing, laughing, and making a scandalous amount of noise, just the way we always did.
Well, that Saturday we had a really long conversation.
And at one point, Sister Estela asked the question, what would happen if those of us who are here right now were to die today? So I was not in the state of grace, and I wasn't going to say anything.
For all of us, it was a question like, whoa, right now I'm going to really ask myself if I'm ready to die or not.
No, I can't die today. I have to go to confession first, and this can't be my day. I was trying to hide my anxious face, of course. Like, no, I can't die today. I can't die today.
Each one of us responded, and I said, I'm not ready.
And then I looked at them, trying to decipher their faces. And the truth is that Valeria had a face of tranquility and peace.
And I remember that Valeria said that she was ready.
And it's because she desired it. Not only in that moment. She wanted it and had already said it many times. And not like another person might say like, yeah, I'm ready. No, just in a superficial way. No, it's that you saw it. You could almost feel it. It was like, this girl is really ready. She doesn't have the slightest concern at the thought that she might die today. I couldn't have imagined that really an earthquake would occur that day and that she would die.
I had been with her in the morning. She had arrived at my mom's house at 11 o'clock. And my sister Zoily was also there, and myself, and we were just sharing a couple of hours with her.
She said goodbye with great joy. She gave me many kisses and she hugged me tightly. I love you very much and thank you, Mamita, for everything, for raising me, for everything, Mamita. She had come to say goodbye.
At 1 o'clock, we left. We left her there at the school, and I went home.
My last memory of Valeria is seeing her work. Seeing her work with a lot of enthusiasm. Because during that week of the floods in Playa Prieta, I hadn't been there much time with her because I couldn't work like the rest of them were. So I wasn't with them the whole time. But when I saw her arrive at lunchtime, I could tell in her face that she was tired. I noticed tiredness, but I never noticed sadness. She was tired, yeah, but she was still smiling. And she worked very hard, very hard.
After the Mass at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, here in Playa Prieta, we went outside of the church. We all talked for a little while.
And Sister said, well, you guys are going to have guitar class with Sister Clare.
Those who were there in the guitar class at that moment were Valeria, Catalina, Maria Augusta, Mayra, and Yasmina wasn't there.
And I went upstairs, and since we hadn't finished cleaning up the kitchen, we were cleaning up. Jasmina was with us.
And I went up to the building and found them there in the corner, where the picture of Our Lady of Garabandales, and they were playing the guitar.
And we were about to go downstairs to pray the rosary.
They all said to me, Carola, come over here. And I said, I'm going home right now. I'll be right back.
And I popped in because I heard the song, I Prefer Paradise.
So I got to my house, And a few minutes later, the earthquake happened. And I never saw them again. I never saw them again.
She had said she wanted to die a martyr, like Jesus died, suffering.
She knew in her heart that she wouldn't live long. That's why she was in a hurry to be a saint. She didn't know if she'd have time to be one.
She had told me that she was well prepared, that if God were to come and call her, that she was going to die happily, because she was prepared.
More than once she told me that she would like to die young, because she wanted to be with the Lord.
To die now, at 15? What else can I want? Why wait?
I was her teacher, I had that grace, and yet I felt like I was her student.
She was always doing what she had to do and with joy, where she had to be and with joy.
She always went with her smile wherever she was sent. She only wanted to fulfill God's will in every moment.
For me, she was a model of, well, of course the church has to define this, but what I experienced being in front of Valeria was that I was in front of a holy teenager.
Well, I truly think that she was prepared for that encounter with the Lord. Her desire had always been heaven, and that is what I hope the Lord has given her, heaven.